Hi, and welcome back to the Still Rolling Jiu Jitsu podcast. My name is Matthew Montgomery. Today's guest has lived at the intersection of military service, combat sports, and leadership at a level that very few people ever have. Colton Smith is a decorated United States Army infantryman, combat veteran, Ranger, and Sapper qualified senior non-commissioned officer, Army Combatives master trainer, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt, professional mixed martial artist, and the winner of season 16 of The Ultimate Fighter. During his fighting career, Colton competed in the UFC and faced some of the toughest names of his generation, including Robert Whitaker, Michael Chiesa, and Diego Ferreira, and Sean Brady. Today, he continues to coach, lead, and develop others through the Enlisted Nine Fight Company, bringing together lessons from wrestling, jiu-jitsu, professional fighting, military service, and years of leadership under pressure. We're going to talk about his path from Iowa wrestling to the Army, his experience inside the Ultimate Fighter house, the highs and lows of professional fighting, and the role of combatives in developing soldiers, leaders, and what martial arts continues to teach him today. Colton, welcome to Still Rolling Jiu Jitsu. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, number one, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the UFC. This is a jiu-jitsu podcast, and I noticed recently that you've been competing at black belt in IBJJF. I saw you rocking you went 4 gold in one shot recently in Virginia.
Yeah, Virginia Open. Yep.
Okay, so I also want to talk a little bit about your experience in the Army, because you might be the only one that's been on active military duty while you've also been on the active roster in the UFC. And I want to figure out that time piece. And then finally, the other thing that I want to get into is just kind of how I've read a little bit about how you've talked about tunnel vision and being able to step back a little bit, and what kind of things improve your outlook as you're in a pressure situation where a lot of people can tend to be, tunnel visioned. But let's start. You were born in 1987. You're almost going to be in the next Masters division. You get up there with me someday. So you wrestled in Iowa growing up. You grew up in Iowa and you're a wrestler?
Yeah, born and raised. I was 4 years old. In Iowa, there's not a whole lot to do. So it's, wrestling, bush light, and corn. So if you're not somehow affiliated with those 3 things, I'm not sure what you do in Iowa. So yes, lifelong wrestler, still grappling, obviously. And and wrestling will always hold a near and dear place in my heart, and so will state of Iowa.
Okay. And you brought that wrestling background, obviously, into the UFC, but also onto the mats. As you know, it's a base for a whole lot of folks that are in this. Now, why did you choose? Because you were a good wrestler in high school, correct? Weren't you?
Yeah, I was definitely. Wrestling's what I always expected to do. I was going to do for myself. I really expected that I would continue to wrestle well past, my adult years. It's all I ever knew growing up, and it's what kept me out of trouble. It's what kept me kind of on the straight and narrow in life. And I do say this, and it may sound a little cliche, but I do believe wrestling saved my life. It's definitely changed the trajectory of my life. And if it wasn't for wrestling, I don't know if I would have ever joined the military. I don't know if I ever would have met the people that I met that kind of led me to the military. And then ultimately I would have never fought. I would have never, been, in the arenas I've been in life. So yeah, wrestling has such a deep meaning to me. There's a saying, once you've wrestled in life, once you've wrestled, everything else in life is easy. And I do believe that moniker for sure. Now, it was my goal and dream to wrestle in the Army. I thought I was going to join the Army to wrestle. I was going to, stand out wrestler throughout school and in my youth days. And college wasn't probably in the cards for me at the time. I wasn't mature enough. I was 17 years old when I graduated high school. And it just wasn't one of those situations where I felt that I was going to go to college and be able to do anything of substance for myself. So a recruiter told me I could wrestle in the Army.
Okay.
And which isn't necessarily false, but definitely wasn't how it was explained to me if I joined the Army. And it was the height of the war in Iraq too. So long story short, I signed up and joined as an infantryman, airborne infantryman, and And I was told that once I get to my unit, I can just let them know, like, hey, I signed up to wrestle, you know.
Did you actually go to one of your sergeants when you were fresh to the? Do they call it the fleet in the army? Like
No,
I'm
they
a
don't call it
Marine.
they don't yeah,
Okay.
they don't call it the fleet, but yeah, when I got to my unit, I mean, we were prepping to go to during the surge in Iraq, Western Baghdad, and I did bring it up a few times. It is kind of funny because once I started learning, the actual process and win the All Army championships, then you go to the World Class Athlete program and try out for that, and then it's a big long arduous process. And to be honest though, I was hooked on the Army. I was hooked on the infantry. I was hooked on being, a paratrooper and just doing what we do day in and day out. And so if I would have signed probably a 30-year contract after basic training, because I was so indoctrinated and hooked on it. So it's what I definitely needed. And then, got into MMA and jiu-jitsu shortly after. MMA first before I even got into jiu-jitsu. Kind of got in the cage and fought before I even had any requisite training. So that's how I got hooked. So yes, wrestling will always have that near and dear place in my heart, still does, and I think it changes the lives and trajectory of young men and women all over the country, all over the world.
Yeah, I agree. Some of your story is a little bit familiar. I joined the Marine Corps at 17, and I did the initial push in 2003 in OF1, but I was not what they would say college bound kid. I didn't see a whole lot of um, value in my education when I was young, even though I probably would have been okay. But the Marine Corps is probably exactly what I needed. Um, Now, what did Ranger school and combat deployments teach you that genuinely transferred into mixed martial arts? What didn't
Yeah,
transfer?
yeah. I went to Ranger School and Sapper School at a young age in my career, at least as a young junior soldier, junior leader. Um, you know, I think I put Ranger School on a pedestal, early in my career, and I saw, leaders with their Ranger qualified and different special operators that are Ranger qualified, and I looked at that and I kind of put it on a pedestal, like, man, I need to achieve that. That's something I immediately kind of sought after to go towards and get. And I think I put it on a pedestal to the level of like not unattainability by any means, but definitely realize now, obviously in hindsight, that it's a piece of cloth and you have an option. You can either lead with it or you can hide behind it. And it's something that I've kind of carried in other aspects, like whether you got a tan beret, a green beret, a maroon beret, are you hiding behind it or are you leading with it? Do you have a long tab? Do you have a short tab? Are you that? And this is in terms of special operations, obviously, and I see it so much where there's folks that have those tabs, sapper, ranger, whatever it may be, and they're going to get promoted and they're going to move up to the ranks the same way you are. But are you leading with it or you hide behind it? So as far as like the difficulty, Ranger School isn't difficult. I think, I'm not being pretentious or trying to act like I'm not minimizing what Ranger School is. It's the premier leadership school in the United States Army. It is. That's where I look at it. It's not that it's a terrible suck fest. It is obviously, and you're not eating, you're not in your element. Obviously, you're not getting showers, and it's just kind of it is a suck fest. But that's not the point of it. The point of it is, can I lead, 30 pissed off, hungry Ranger students who aren't being graded, who don't know me from Adam, and can I effectively lead them and have the art of leadership in those moments, while I'm still feeling the fatigue and so lessons learned in that. Definitely, it took me a while to really realize what Ranger School was. When I graduated, I was like, this was it. This is what I was looking for. I had been cutting weight since I was 12 years old, so food
Yeah,
deprivation and I didn't grow up in a very glamorous lifestyle as a child, kind of humble beginnings, and so Ranger School wasn't like a shock to me in the sense of like, oh, I have no food, I'm not in my element. I'd been in similar situations growing up, so I think that kind of helped me definitely get through, and luckily I didn't get injured in Ranger School or anything like that, and I was able to go straight through. And I was young, I was 20 years old when I went through, I think. So I went straight through and got my tab, which is always great, not to recycle or get stuck in
yeah,
mountains or in Florida phase or something. But I do push every infantryman. I do think it's extremely important. If you have the opportunity, you should go. That should be like the pinnacle of especially conventional infantrymen. And we had Marines in my class. I know several Marines that have the Ranger tab, obviously, and even as a Green Beret, like the Green Berets that I work with, like a lot of them are Ranger qualified, and there is definitely stigma sometimes with Green Berets with having to go to Ranger school or SEALs when SEALs get sent there. Usually it's because
Yeah.
they got in trouble. We had some SEALs in my class that got in trouble. That's why they got sent there. But I look at that though. I think that for anybody, there's definitely something to be learned in those moments of again the art of leadership. So if you fancy yourself as a coach, mentor, leader in the military and you have the opportunity to go to Ranger school, absolutely. But just don't put it on a pedestal and don't look at it like it's this unattainable thing because that's not the case. If 20-year-old, 21-year-old, whatever I might have been, Colton got it, I promise anybody can get it because I was a mess back then.
Well, what do you think? So, what do you think it is that? So, I mean, I've been in the military, and in the day to day, when you're a lower enlisted guy, sometimes motivation can be fleeting, and then if I had a dime for every guy that told me that they wish they would have done this or they would have worked harder when they were, enlisted, guys that got out, um, what is it that can motivate a younger enlisted guy to go and bite something like that off so that they don't hit their 40s and they're going, man, I didn't go and do Ranger school. I didn't try to, go do a recon in doc, whatever that is.
I think that there's a big fear of failure, and I know, especially in the infantry, in the Marine Corps. So I worked with a lot of Marines. I'm in a joint environment, and I've worked with Marines for almost half my career, so I'm around Marines a lot. I probably relate more to Marines than I do probably my own branch, to be honest with you. And I look at even the Marine Corps, and the Marine Corps eats their own, and the Army infantry eats their own as well. It's one of those things where if you fail, you are going to get razzed, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I do agree with kind of how hard nosed the infantry is in both branches. I think that's important. I think that it's a different culture for a reason. It needs to be because of the job, obviously. But I don't agree if one of my soldiers is prepared and he leaves, one of my Marines is prepared and he leaves and he goes to Ranger school and he fails. As long as it wasn't an honor violation, integrity violation, we can retrain him, we can send him back there. If it's an integrity violation, then that's a character flaw that we missed a long time before sending him to Ranger school or her to Ranger school in this day and age. But I think that that's definitely a concept we need a culture shift we need to get out of is just smashing folks that try something that dare to be great and they fail. I mean, I do believe in the fail hard, fail fast, fail often. Just don't fail the same thing over and over. Obviously,
Right.
that moniker I think is very important to live by. If as long as you prepare yourself and you look yourself in the mirror that you prepared, done your best case scenario for a situation and gone out and attained that. So I do think that there's leaders that either they're tab bearer, they're tab protectors, or badge protectors to the point where they don't want to see people succeed the way they have, or the opposite. Maybe somebody failed, had a bad experience going through selection, SFA selection, or recon indoc, or Ranger school, whatever it may be, and they had a bad experience, so they don't want to push people towards that path. Maybe because they didn't, it's a definitely something within them why they try to keep other people from attaining that stuff. And I've seen it. I've seen senior leaders that have the capability to send people to Ranger school, Sapper school, whatever it may be, and they try to stop it. Oh, we got NTC coming up. Oh, we got a
Yeah.
deployment cycle coming up. Oh, you can't lose one Lance Corporal. You can't lose one PFC because come on, no, that's hogwash. So I think that's something that I've seen firsthand some leaders and again growing up my first unit I won't trash my first unit it was a very rough time in our country, very rough time in the war, very rough time in the military. And I look back though, I probably realized more of what not to be than what to be as far as leaders go,
Yeah.
and what I was subjected to. So that's something that I had to shift within myself and realize, okay, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be one of these guys. And when I say one of these guys, I don't mean like my peers. I mean some of the leaders that I had. I know I don't want to be that person. I know I want to continue my military career. So how can I get to where I want to be? And that's when I just started beg, borrowing, stealing to get to different schools. It could be any school imaginable. It doesn't have to be Ranger, Sapper, Airborne, whatever. Any school I could get to, I wanted to get there and get out of the situation I was in unit wise.
Sure. Well, and there's something to be said about that. I think a lot of people, if it, not that we're going to turn this into a lower enlisted seminar, but a lot of guys get out. They maybe they check into kind of a command that has some challenges, and then they decide, hey, the entire Army or the entire Marine Corps or Navy or whatever it is, that okay, it's not for me because this major sucks, and it's one CO or one first sergeant that kind of they ruined their quote unquote first enlistment, so now they think the whole thing's not worth staying around for. But you can also make the decision. What you said something that you can learn what you didn't want to be, and that's everywhere in life. I grew up with some male role models in my life that I don't want to be anything like. And there's a lot of people that talk about the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I think that's bullshit. I think that kind of an excuse, it's just a cop out when if you're repeating the shitty things that your dad did or whatever. I think it's a cop out and an excuse. I think you can be stronger than that. You can just choose to be. Period. And I'm speaking from some personal experience that
I'm with you, brother. I'm with you.
So, if you're listening, go forge your own path and go after those schools that maybe, if you don't ask, you're not going to get to go to. And speaking of asking for weird things, how did you actually convince the Army that they needed to let you go fight and go to the tough house?
Yeah. So there is, I think people have preconceived notions that I received some preferential treatment from the Army, and I've continued to receive preferential treatment from the Army. Couldn't be further from the truth. If anything, I had, for every one leader, I told someone this the other day, for every one leader that I had that supported me, I probably had three that either wanted to see me fail or couldn't fathom in their minds that you can exceed the standard as a non-commissioned officer, as a leader, but also as an elite athlete or whatever, a hobby, business owner, whatever it may be on the outside of the military. They couldn't, truly, understand or conceptualize that in their minds. So it was a dogfight. I remember my first fight I ever took was 7 days after my first deployment. And I had just watched some bootleg DVDs, in between patrols and on guard and stuff like that and doing QRF missions. And 7 days later, I found myself at a weigh-in 6 days later, found myself for a weigh-in for a fight, and someone didn't show up. Someone didn't make weight. And I was just getting into MMA, watching it, on those DVDs in Iraq. And I raised my hand and said, yeah, I'll fight. And I went up there and fought the next night, and I ended up winning the fight. And I didn't know what I was doing. And I look back on that, and that was kind of a defining moment for me. And that was a situation where I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. Let me figure out how I can do this while still simultaneously serving my country. So even as a lower enlisted, I was, got back to my unit. I had the DVD that they burned that night for our fights, and they gave it to us. And I put it in the platoon computer, and I showed my PL and my platoon sergeant at the time. I was like, look what I did on leave, and their eyes got real big. They're like, you can't do that. And that was the first moment I was like, oh, crap, maybe the Army doesn't like this thing, even though I just left Iraq as a machine gunner. I was a 240 gunner, almost that whole deployment, and a fire team leader, doing things for our country. And now I can't go fight in a cage. Like, you let me go down there, I mean, it was, again, during for the listeners, during the surge, my unit that I was in, we lost 54 people in my brigade during that time. This is 2006, 2008 time frame. And so, like, thinking about that, you're just like, after leave, maybe I was gone on leave for whatever, 14, 21 days, whatever it was, and I came back. But, like, you just spent 16, 17 months doing these things for the country and in Iraq and for the Iraqi people. And then now I can't go fight in the cage in my free time. So it was kind of strange to me, even as a young kid in the Army. I'm like, this is so wild. Like, I can go and carry a 240 around, and now I can't go fight in a cage in a sanctioned fight. So I knew there'd be an uphill battle from there, and it was, but I just wouldn't take no for an answer. I just kept fighting it. Now, as far as the actual UFC goes and the Ultimate Fighter, man. So by that time, I was a young staff sergeant when I went and tried out for the Ultimate Fighter, and I didn't tell anybody I was going to do it. I went and just tried out, and it's a long process. It was like, from the moment I tried out to when I think I was on the show, it might have been like 6 months. So it's a pretty long process, and there's multiple steps to get through that. Thousands of people come and try out initially, and then they whittle it down, through interview processes and through like demos, like you're showing your grappling, your striking, and medicals and everything else, drug testing. There's a bunch of parameters you have to pass through, so a bunch of wickets to get through, especially at that time when things were a lot more analog than they are nowadays. So I'm sure things are a lot more streamlined in that process. But um, according to the UFC, the Army said I was good to go from day one, which wasn't the case. It wasn't that I was lying. Okay, so I had
Okay.
I had a I had a O 03. I had a captain in the Army, an O 03, a lieutenant in the Navy, so not a captain like O 06 in the Navy, but and I had an O 03 that wrote a memorandum before I went, and a buddy of mine that wrote a memorandum basically saying like, "Hey, I support him," and it said, it says Captain
Yeah.
Infantry Commanding, so if you're like a Fox executive and you see a paper that says a captain, it says commanding on there, you're like,
Commanding.
oh
Yeah.
crap, okay, and it's on the Army letterhead with our, with the unit, so it looks like it's a memorandum, it looks like the real deal. So when I got to the interview process, when I made it to that point, basically they were like, "Hey, do you have, we know who you are, you're active duty. Unfortunately, we've had active duty folks in the past that made it through this far, and then unfortunately the service didn't, whatever." I was like, "No, no, I got this right here." They looked at it and they're like, "Wow, we got one that's, the military said it's okay." So then the fight was on because I knew they loved me, I knew they wanted me. So I was like, "Oh crap, I'm gonna have to really figure this out now." So as fate would have it, I knew the three corps commander, so three-star general. I knew his son. His son trained with me in the evenings. I would teach class on post for free on the evenings, and his son trained with me. His son's awesome. Son's still an awesome fighter. Um, and because of that, I knew I had at least a connection to sit down with the three-star as a staff sergeant. I had to go through like 8 levels of command, but I kind of put a bug in his son Craig's ear, and eventually, it wasn't until the day before I was to fly for filming that I got the green light from his dad. So
Wow.
literally the day before, and I was doing the official way. I was going up through my chain of command. I was letting them know what's going on. And the story is General Odierno was the chief of staff of the Army at the time, and he was golfing with Don Campbell, Lieutenant General Campbell at the time, and he basically told Don Campbell, if it was up to me, which I'm not going to leave it up to me, I'm going to leave it up and basically delegate it down to you. I would say no because of the risk involved. Not the risk of me, but the risk of the service, of like, making the service look bad, because
Sure.
this is unprecedented, obviously, at this time.
Yeah.
And so Don Campbell, basically, he pulled me in into his office, and I mean, I had my company commander all the way up, my company leadership all the way up to my division leadership. So up to two-star general behind me in the office, in Don Campbell's office at Three Corps, at the headquarters, and he was behind his desk, and they're all behind me in this office, and I still didn't know if it was a yes or no. This is literally the day before I was to fly, and they had the JAG in there as well. So he basically looks over the JAG and says, "Hey, is this doable?" And the JAG said, "Well, depends on how much leave he has, because I think at this point we can't give him permissive TDY, we can't give him, just free days off, so he has to take his personal leave." And luckily, I never took leave because I was always just busy with being an infantryman, so I had roughly 54 days of leave saved up, and I took
Okay.
all 54 days for the show, for the filming of the show. And Lieutenant General Campbell said one thing. He's retired now, so I can say this. He said one thing to me. He's like, I'm gonna, told me the whole Odierno thing, and then he said, "Hey, look," he's like, "bottom line, if you step on your crank, I'm gonna effing crucify you," is what he said. And
Yeah.
so I saluted him, Phantom Warriors. That was like the unit, whatever. So I saluted him. He stood up, saluted me. Returned the hand salute. And before I walked out the door, he stopped me and he said, "Wait 1 second." He's like, "Staff Sergeant Smith." I'm like, "Yes, sir." He's like, "Craig is a real estate agent, not a fighter." And I said, "Excuse me?" And his son was an adult at the time, 21 years old, but he was
Yeah.
living around that area. He's like, my son Craig, he is a real estate agent, not a fighter. And I was like, Roger, sir. So he was saying like basically don't push
Don't
my son down this path of being
take
a
him
professional
down.
fighter.
Yeah.
And what's crazy, I win the show. I come back. Craig and I are training partners, obviously. Craig owns and has owned a fight gym for the past like 10, 12 years and been a professional fighter ever since then. So it's pretty funny. Like
Does he
Don
maintain his
Campbell,
real estate license though?
yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, Don Campbell might be kicking himself for letting me go on the show 'cause I don't know. But
Well, you went and
yeah,
represented, right? You went undefeated in the house, didn't you? You
I
you
did.
ran
I did.
you
I won the
you
show, beat
ground right
everybody.
through everybody.
Yep.
Um, so now, and you had relatively, you didn't have a ton of fights when you
No,
went into the house. You were inexperienced, and you were still able to
very,
just kind of grind
very.
these things out.
Yeah.
Uh,
And yeah, because of my military background, I'm telling you, it's because of my military experiences, not because I was a better fighter, because I wasn't the better fighter.
yeah.
It was the experience of being away from my family, being away from my element, being, you know, in uncomfortable situations for a long period of time and on deployments and different things. And I feel like that's why I didn't believe I could win initially. I'll be honest with you, being honest steward of my skills and resources and what I understood of my training at the time and how much I didn't know about the fighting. And I was never a full-time fighter,
Hmm.
but this is the first time I was able to train full time, first time ever, and I saw as the show went on, I watched these elite athletes, these elite fighters break mentally in the house, which is crazy. You're in a for military folks, like we're in a mansion in Vegas. We
Yeah.
have no soldiers that are, none of our subordinates that are, at the drunk tank I got to pick up on the weekends. There's no bills coming in. You can't make a phone call. You can't get a phone call. You can't get mail. I mean, which whatever that might be like hard for some people, but I can put a wish list at nighttime on a piece of paper and put it on the kitchen counter with my name on it. And by 11 p.m. and by 5 a.m., that'll be in the house waiting for me. There's like minions in the production team that will go and like fetch
Yeah.
whatever food and drinks you want for the next day. Um, Come on, man. Like it was,
Yeah.
it's like a dream for an athlete or someone that wants to be a little selfish for 6 weeks.
Sure.
You can't beat
Well,
it.
and if you're right on that cusp, I mean, it's not even that selfish. Sometimes when you're close to that kind of a dream, so to speak, you know, you gotta make the jump, just like any other school or whatever. But I do remember actually watching your season, and I remember, as soon as I saw you were in the military, I was like, I'm pulling for that guy, because he's a service member. But you were nervous in that first one. You have the glove touch thing, and that whatever. And I'm not going to get into that, but I'm sure that you would do things a little bit different as far as that glove touch goes. But you went in and you ground these fights out, and then so you win tough, and then your fights in the actual UFC. I mean, nobody knew it at the time necessarily, but that's a murderer's row of dudes that you faced. I mean, Michael Chiesa just now retired last weekend.
Yeah, Carlos Diego Ferreira still fighting.
Yeah,
He's fighting on the next card. He's 41 years old, still fighting, and
right.
obviously Robert Whitaker and Sean Brady. But yeah,
I mean, that's a tough lineup to be thrown in. And again, I know that you won the tough house, but you were still way inexperienced compared to everybody
for
else
sure.
you're fighting. So
Yeah, it's pretty wild to like get to that level and part of it is like so I talked to some other fighters, so I received locker room bonuses for every one of my fights, and this is maybe the last few years I was part of this big WhatsApp chat of a bunch of former UFC fighters. Like there's like 600, 700 of us on this WhatsApp chat,
mhm.
and we talk about different things that are going on with UFC veterans, and there's that lawsuit that happened and stuff like that. So that's ultimately why we were all brought on this WhatsApp chat. Well, I received a locker room bonus after every one of my fights, and I also received like discretionary bonuses, and I got DVD points and stuff like that. So I get checks after that. Well, I didn't realize at the time. I think I was a little naive to it. I, they'd call me like, "Hey, will you fight Robert Whitaker?" And I remember I remember the moment I was in ALC, like advanced leadership course, like my staff sergeant course, basically with the Army. And I'm get a phone call, and I just got there. I think I signed in, and they're like, "Hey, will you fight Robert Whitaker?" Whatever it was, 6, 7 weeks in MGM Grand. I was like, "Well, I got to put in leave and stuff like that." But I was like, "Yeah, why not? I'm able-bodied, why not?" And then I think back on it, and I'm like, "Man, I'm at this course for 4 weeks away from my training, which I'm still in the Army full time. It's not like
Yeah.
this isn't my full-time job." So it's like, okay, I'll train these 4 weeks here. I'll stay in shape, and then I'll go back home, and then I'll do 2 weeks back home, and then I'll take a leave. I'll take leave and take 4 or 5 days to go out to Vegas and fight this guy that just won tough in Australia. And looking back, it's funny because I can like vividly remember when all fights were offered to me. Not one time was it ever the question of like, hey, I don't want to fight him. Let me give me an easier opponent. Give me a more suitable opponent because I'm still trying to hone my skills. It was like, oh, of course, if I can get leave, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And would I change it? Hindsight would tell you like, yeah, let's be smarter about this. Let's maybe develop over 6 to 8 months and then take a fight and then develop again over, and not just stay in fight camp or not just. But I didn't have that luxury of one understanding that whole concept, and two, um, I don't think I would change things because I am a prize fighter. I believe in my skills. Why am I going to pick and choose fights? So it may not be the smartest path. And I wouldn't allow my fighters now that I coach to do the same things I did, make the same decisions I
Sure.
made. But at the end of the day, I also was at a crossroads when I won the Ultimate Fighter. I could have got out of the military. I was close to my ETS date. I was very close to EASing. Like,
That was going to be my next question is like, what did
yeah, it
that look
was.
like when it was time to re-up?
Well, at that point, General Milley took over. So General Milley, the eventual, chief of staff of the Army and eventual chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he was a 3-star at the time, and he took over for General Campbell. So after I won the show, shortly after, he came in and he was interested in what I was doing. And so he asked me, he said, we're going to lose you, huh? And that's what he said. We're going to lose you, huh? And the JAG was in the room, and I said, "Well, actually, I think I'm going to re-enlist her." And he looked at the JAG, he's like, "Can he do that?" And the JAG's like, "I guess." Like, so they had no clue how they were going to navigate this,
Yeah.
and neither did I. Well, the crazy part is the Army just did nothing about it. Like I re-enlisted, I stayed in, obviously, continued to be a leader, and I was going up to the ranks, and that made it a little bit more difficult too, because as I progressed as an infantryman, as I progressed rank wise, obviously you have a lot more responsibilities, and it's almost would be easier if you were just like a lower enlisted,
Yeah.
leader or lower enlisted Joe. But as you become like a senior leader, it's like, man, how am I gonna take leave if my guys aren't taking leave? I can't do that. I can't,
Right.
everyone else takes block leave, pre-deployment leave or something like that. I can't just take leave because I'm an athlete now. So um I knew that I wanted to stay in. So it's so hard because, like, as a Christian, I had this God birth dream where I want to be a professional athlete at the highest level. I want to be in the UFC, and I want to, be a leader at whatever level I can achieve, and wherever I can achieve that, and continue to do things that I wanted to conquer in my military career as well. So I just could not make that decision to get out of the Army. I couldn't fathom it, and I know I would have regretted that if I would have got out of the Army, and it would have given me more time to train, and I probably would have had a better UFC career. I guess you could say that, but I don't I don't regret what I did, the path I took. I don't regret who I fought. I don't regret any of that. There's no regrets. I will take those lessons though, and I've done a lot better job of managing my fighters that I teach, coach, and mentor, and
Yeah.
when I talk to young fighters as well. But the fighting life, man, it's you're as good as your last fight. There's no health care in it. There's no retirement. This isn't the NFL. You can be on a practice squad in the NFL getting a pension. That doesn't happen in the UFC, obviously.
Sure.
I don't complain about the UFC pay though. I got paid very well when I was in the UFC. I got good sponsorships and stuff. While you could still have sponsors, and it's definitely. I'm not naive to the fact that being a UFC veteran, Ultimate Fighter winner has propelled my gyms and my entrepreneurial aspirations. Has definitely helped that a lot.
Well, and you've done well, and I'll ask about Enlisted Nine here in a minute. And um, You mentioned General Milley. Actually, I think one of my coaches, and he's a friend of mine now, General Ferreter. I don't know if you are aware of who
Oh
he
yeah.
is,
Oh, he's a legend. Yeah.
but
Yeah. General Mike Farrader.
yep,
Absolutely. He's a
yep.
legend. Yeah.
So he'll be on the mats with me tomorrow morning. He teaches in the mornings at Gracie, Ohio. But we talk a lot about combatives and obviously I talk about MCMAP and that kind of thing. And so I'm curious, since you're still on active duty, Modern Army Combatives, and I talked a little bit about it with General Ferreter when he was on the podcast about some units will kind of undertrain. They don't prioritize, um, close combat combatives, and those types of things. When there's so many benefits outside of just learning how to throw a punch or learning an armbar that combatives or MCMAP can do for a unit as it relates to unit cohesion and closeness. The same stuff you get on the mats in jiu-jitsu. You have that tight knit tribe that you end up with because you're all on the mats all the time. What does that look like in the Army, or are you able to promote it that way?
Absolutely. Yes. So, man, yeah, that's that topic right there. We could have another 4 hours of talking about combatives, talking about MCMAP, talking about just the symbiotic relationship that combatives, MCMAP programs has with lethality, close quarters lethality, but also with the spirit of corps
Mm-hmm.
in bringing the togetherness in a unit and the cohesion of a unit together. And there's nothing else. I mean, it's the most intimate form of not. You look at combatives; it's the most intimate form of combat. You take away our weapons, take away our technology, take away everything that we have that in this day and age, in this advanced age in the military, and we're left with our hands. And hands kill. Hands is what manipulates those firearms. Hands what manipulate the technology we have. And if we're stripped away of all of that, what are we left with? And that's our chassis. That's our ability to fight. That's our ability, obviously, to be physically, mentally, emotionally strong. And combatives, MCMAP, uh, by and large, that is where that's built. Of all the schooling that I've done, and I've done a lot of advanced schooling, well past the Ranger Sapper stuff I've done later in my career. There is nothing I think that is as impactful as what combatives and MCMAP can do for you. And I work very closely with the MACE, the Martial Arts Center of Excellence, the Marine Corps on Quantico.
Mm-hmm.
So they call it the MAFC now because they've combined the Force Fitness Instructor Program with the MACE and the Marine Corps. But watching those guys and gals there, how they tie everything together with the warrior spirit, with the background and history of the Marine Corps, which the Marine Corps does a phenomenal job from the lowest private all the way up when it comes to the history, which I love that about the Marine Corps. But seeing that and then seeing the evolution of the Army Combatives program when Mike Farrader and Matt Larson spearheaded it. They call Mike Farrader the godfather of the Army Combatives program, and they call Matt Larson the father of the Army Combatives program.
Yeah,
And just watching from the NCO side of Matt Larson and watching from the officer side with General Farrader and seeing what they built and how they built it, and then where it's blossomed into now. Again, you see folks that do not support it. You see officers that become senior officers, senior leaders that don't support it. And the reason for that, though, is the culture of the combatives program at the time. When that senior officer now used to be a lieutenant, he got his butt kicked by some corporal or sergeant that
right.
was running the program because it is an NCO ran program in the Army, that is, and it's a situation where it shouldn't be a rite of passage, and that's what it was for a long time. But like, and we didn't, a lot of these guys didn't look and think about that. Like that guy's going to be your battalion commander one day, and now you're beating up this poor lieutenant and you're concussing him and cutting him up. And then his thoughts of combatives is, well, I was in a line and I got beat up by some corporal. Like that's
Sure.
never going to happen again. So I'm not going to support that program. And so we've seen in the Army where we've had to really shift it to where, yes, we're not going to water down the training, but we're definitely not going to make it a rite of passage where, having people die in the clinch drill option 3 drill, which has happened in the Army Combatives program. Unfortunately, there's a couple black eyes on the program from the rite of passage training we used to have. But watching it evolve, and now we have our Special Operation Combatives program, which I'm an instructor for as well, and I've been instructing for the past decade. doing that, it's pretty cool to see the evolution of where we take non-theoretical war fighting experience from the GWAT, where we have 25 years of non-theoretical war fighting. We're taking those lessons learned, the anecdotal proof. We're also taking law enforcement lessons learned from around the world, CCTV footage, and we're able to honestly alter doctrine for the combatives program, more so for the SOCP program, because we can kind of evolve that very quickly, and cut the red tape and build programs that actually work, and we have proof of it. And now you see elite law enforcement agencies and federal law enforcement agencies adopting the combatives program for a reason. So I'm a huge proponent of combatives. I know I just like spoke like I was a salesman for it, but I think it changes the mindset of everyone. Doesn't matter if you're a junior leader, junior soldier, all the way up. And getting those leaders to swallow their pride, put ego aside, and get on the mats with their guys. Man, that is so invaluable. And it's not about the guys beating you up. If some Lance criminal beats up a
Sure.
crusty gunny, no, they're gonna respect the hell out of you, gunny, for stepping in the pit with that Lance criminal. You're
Yeah.
so that's where I see it. That's what and
Well,
and
and
so yes, I'm
that's
a huge proponent for it.
we see that in jujitsu every day. As I mentioned, General Ferriter, he's still on the mats, and is he gonna go out and win an ADCC still? No, he's
Right,
70.
right.
An elder statesman. I'll refrain from calling him old, but he's full of all the knowledge, and obviously he is more influential. Him and the guys that were implementing it with him. He's very humble when he talks about it. He's just kind of the guy that facilitated that change to Army combatives. He's one of the most influential people, not just as far as Americans that do jujitsu, but for our American military. I mean, I can't think of like a specific thing where you could point to one guy and say, this guy changed the way that our military does business. Um, there's not a lot of those.
No, there's
And,
not.
I'm fortunate that I get to train with him, all week. Um, so, yeah, you weren't in yet, but I was in when we still had line training, and I was in when it turned, that transition into MCMAP. The line training was awful. I don't know if if you know that
Yes, I'm tracking.
it
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
we joke around that somebody was going to go out into town and get their ass kicked, trying to use their line training. But like anything else, if you're not doing MCMAP or combatives or jujitsu on a regular basis, that's also a skill that you need to be training regularly to be any good at. Um, what do you think that jujitsu might teach that combatives does not, and then what does combatives teach that jujitsu misses?
Yeah, I think they can complement one another. I think that the jujitsu that we do have in combatives is enough. Is enough in the regard of like a near peer adversary who we're fighting. I look at it that way. I look at what are the Russians doing with Sambo? Are their soldiers, utilizing Sambo? What are the Chinese doing on a grand scale? Look at near peer adversaries and what they're doing. That's the way I look at when I'm teaching, and the way I'm articulating to at least my student population or who's in my unit when I talk about combatives and the importance of what we prioritize as far as instructing. Now, there are some things I think that we could adopt as jujitsu has evolved, because we look at wrestling. Wrestling's the ultimate martial art. It's 15,000 years old. It's biblical. Jujitsu, as we know it, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, 125 years, maybe 125 years, like not a whole lot. It's
Yeah.
not it's not that old. So there's still a large evolution of jujitsu that we're going to see, even though it is cyclical. I think that a lot of things that were cool 10 years ago are just coming back around, and they have a new name for it, which is funny in jujitsu. But I think that there's a symbiotic relationship there, and a major part of combatives needs to be jujitsu, because again, it's about the ability to look at like law enforcement. It's about the ability to control and defend against a larger, more explosive, more athletic opponent, especially if they're untrained. So I think it's remarkable what jujitsu can do for people if they truly understand the application, no matter what their occupational specialty is in the military. or what they do in day-to-day life, obviously, but jiu-jitsu definitely can save lives and be a force multiplier on that battlefield. Now, I will say, and I compete all the time. I love jiu-jitsu, and I travel around the world. I compete as much as I can while I'm able to, and I love it. But I will say that sport jiu-jitsu is flawed in a major way. The way you see nowadays, everyone's butt scooting and scissoring and stuff like that. Obviously, you're never going to do that in a fight. You won't do that in the cage. You won't do
Right.
that in a sport. You're definitely not going to do it on the street. So there are aspects of jujitsu that I tell people all the time at my gym when I teach. I teach Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday at my gym, my our main gym in Virginia. And when I'm teaching or teaching a seminar, I will tell somebody right off the front. I'm like, hey, look, this has a self defense applicability, or this has zero self defense applicability. Don't ever try this on the street. Don't ever try this self defense or in a cage. So I always give like kind of that applicability rating, and I do believe that a lot of jujitsu folks may not understand that context because they've never been in a fight or they've never been subjected to anything outside of sport jujitsu. So I think that is important for us as jujitsu continues to progress and gain popularity, which it has in the United States. I think it's important for us as instructors to be able to delineate what is legitimate that could work for a life-saving technique for that soccer mom on my mat, and then what is something that you should absolutely never try in a self-defense scenario. And so
Sure.
that's
What's sport and what's street?
yeah. So I think that's one of the things where I will, kind of blow the whistle on a lot of what we see in sport jujitsu. There's with that has zero applicability in a fight or in a cage.
Sure. Yeah, that's valid. And it is cyclical. I mean, nobody was doing leg locks, 15 years ago. Dean Lister and some of those guys kind of started changing some things, and then
That's right.
but now everybody knows leg locks. So you're seeing guys start. I think that people are going to start paying attention to why would you ignore the upper half of the body? So I think that that's going to come around, and I also think there's some different rule sets. I'm competing in the Jiu-Jitsu boots and badges this coming weekend in Columbus,
Nice.
Ohio. And if you're listening, there's still a day or two that you can still sign up. It's a submission only event. It's Madison bracketing, so there's still time limits. But if there's no submission in your 5 minutes or whatever, then the ref is going to make a decision on who was attacking submissions. And so there's no points for takedowns or for a couple seconds here or a couple seconds there. So I'm excited for that format specifically because I think that it allows for some attacking jujitsu to happen. It'll be a good time. So that's at the Art Back. Got it. If you're up for a drive, so
I love it.
yeah. And Jiu-Jitsu, the Jiu-Jitsu Open, I know that they got other events that are going to be happening around the country. This specific one, though, the Battle of the Boots and Badges, it's police, fire, military, and veterans. It's open to them and it's free. So if you're in Columbus and you fit one of those categories, there's no excuse. Come out and get some rounds in. See what you got at whatever level that is. So
That's awesome.
it'll be a good event. So how did Enlisted Nine come together, and what does the name mean? Is it off like an E9?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. So the naming convention, Enlisted Nine Fight Company, just stands for the Enlisted Nine ranks. The blue collar types, ones kicking in doors, winning wars, snapping X, cashing checks. That's who we pay homage to when we fly the Enlisted Nine shield and banner. Now, how it started though, when I actually started the actual brand Enlisted Nine before I owned my gyms. So I won the Ultimate Fighter. I had some local notoriety where I was stationed at. Well, unfortunately, there's a second Fort Hood shooting occurred, and another service member. It was one after Nadal Hassan. It was a second Fort Hood shooting. Service member decided to bring a weapon and shoot a bunch of people in his command, and unfortunately, a lot of people perished, and there was a lot of injuries because of that. And the local Fisher House on the military installation, they were at capacity, and they couldn't house anybody else, and there wasn't a lot of support from the local community as far as hotel support for these families of the affected, whether they were waiting to bury their loved one or whether they were waiting for their loved one to get out of the hospital. So the Fisher House was asking for donations. And so I knew a buddy of mine who was a battalion CSM at another unit on the base. He worked with a veteran clothing company and did all the artwork for him. So I knew he knew what he was doing there. He contacted me. We had talked before about doing some T-shirts. And I just never really thought about it again. Well, after the second Forted shooting, I'm like, how can I raise money? I was like, let's do some shirts. So we did some shirts. We did 360. We had to do like different, with this company we ended up working with was doing different quantity of shirts, and that would lower your obviously price per unit if you did so many shirts. So we did 360 Colton Smith shirts. It was shortly after, not too long after the Ultimate Fighter. So I still had some notoriety on base and stuff like that, and people knew me. And so we did 360 Colton Smith shirts, and we sold them out of the trunk of my car, gave all the money to the Fisher House. And that felt great. We did that. It was awesome. We didn't have a name for our company like that. It wasn't even a company yet. We just did these shirts off the cuff, gave the money to the Fisher House, and we sat back after that. And it felt good, obviously, in a philanthropic way to give back and be able to help some of these families of this atrocity. And we ended up circling back up. We said, hey, maybe we got something here. So let's try another shirt. So we did another shirt design. He did a great job. He's a real good artist. So he knew the ins and outs of the industry, obviously. So we did another run of 144 shirts of a different shirt, and we put it up on Facebook, and it sold like hotcakes. And we sold it locally again. So then it just kind of snowballed from there, and that's where Enlisted Nine was born. And then it turned into from a lifestyle brand. It got picked up by a major veteran clothing company. Initially, they pulled in, they did it, basically automated all of my systems. And then now I'm with Nine Line Apparel. Nine Line does all of my automation now, and they run all of my day-to-day stuff for me, customer service, shipping, all that fulfillment.
Okay.
So that's where Enlisted Nine was built. And then the gyms came in 2020, 2 weeks before COVID, when I opened up my first gym.
Yeah.
And I deployed shortly after too on a short notice deployment. But it's been awesome though. The gyms are growing. We got 3 brick and mortar locations. We have another 5 affiliations. So it's growing like wildfire.
Are they all Virginia located, or are they
So we
spread
have
out more?
we have 2 in Maryland. We have one in Hagerstown, Maryland. Seth Karen owns and runs that one. Awesome black belt. Yeah. Then we have our Edgewater, Maryland location. And that's just a phenomenal, beautiful, one of our most beautiful gyms for sure. And then our main one, our headquarters, as we call it, is in Fredericksburg, Virginia, right outside of Marine Corps Base Quantico, and just south of Marine Corps Base Quantico in the FBI Academy. And that is our headquarters location, and that's the one that I'm at generally day to day. And then we're also in the DHS, so the club in the Department of Homeland Security, Coast Guard headquarters. That's our club. And then we are also in the Pentagon Athletic Center. So the club there is an Enlisted Nine Fight Company affiliate as well in the Pentagon. And then we had a club at the Guantanamo Bay, Cuba for a long time as well, which is pretty cool. We had a lot of
Wow.
people rotating through Guantanamo Bay. And so every now and then you'll see a picture from Gitmo with the Enlisted Nine crest. I mean, heck, even yesterday, Sec War was with Bo Nickel and the Penn State wrestling team, and they were grappling, and you can tell it's a racquetball court. And in that racquetball court, there's an Enlisted Nine flag that's on the wall that they posted and stuff. So it's pretty cool to see Sec War and Bo Nickel
Right.
and the Nittany Lion wrestling team in our little dojo in the Pentagon Athletic Center. And then we
How
have
cool is that?
affiliates in North Carolina. We got 3 gyms in North Carolina that are affiliates, and actually we share a naming convention with them. So it's called Disciple Nine. We combine Disciple Mixed Martial Arts with Enlisted Nine Fight Company for 3 going on 4 gyms in North Carolina that are crushing it. So it's been a labor of love for sure, and that's my obviously after I hang up my boots, that'll be my full time gig.
That's incredible. And a lot of times when I talk to guys that are in the military or have been in the military, I talk about, transition, which you're still on active duty. So, you haven't retired yet from that life, but, the transition piece that's you've already answered, you've already got everything kind of, most things lined up when you're no longer putting on, a pickle suit every day. But I did some when I was doing some research about you. you've had conversations about tunnel vision, and it being a lot like, a liability as the level of the competition increased. You know, when I think about it in a jujitsu context, I think about, everybody likes to talk about, hey, when I go to jujitsu, all of life's problems kind of go away, and they will literally do this with their hands, that everything, goes into this tunnel vision thing. Um, can you define what it means to avoid that tunnel vision in a jujitsu context?
Yeah, I think it's really important. When you get singularly focused on one thing, and that's what happened in my fighting career, where I would just it was again, it was one of those things where it was a very beneficial early on, and I'd just kind of blast through the middle of the cage and take the guy down and choke him out real quick, and then as my obviously I went later and later in my career against better opposition, that wasn't going to work, so I had to kind of open my aperture legitimately. I look at that like in a sense of like my ability to truly take in my surroundings and what's going on around me and slow everything down is much more important than going 110 miles an hour straight forward. And I think in jujitsu, you have to have that aperture open to where you can, it is a chess match. It's not like this blunt force trauma, fight to the death, where some people might look at it that way, especially at the higher belt ranks and the more advanced competitions you go to, where you have to, there's just so much going on, and it is the ultimate chess match of life as jujitsu. That's the way I look at it. Is it's a marathon of life, but it's also a chess match consistently. So I think in jujitsu, being able to slow everything down and obviously manage your breathing and everything else, that all goes hand in hand on that. But being able to truly look at the match like the chess match that I think of, instead of just trying to go in there and buzzsaw past people. At a certain level, you can't do that anymore. And I see that too with my competitions in jujitsu, where I've had to really slow down my approach. And it's not always a situation where I need to impose my will. I need to allow them to actually impose their will, maybe to make a mistake to where I can capitalize on it. And I think I wouldn't say that I enter every match the same way. Um, I've had a lot of success over the last several years in jiu-jitsu competition. I think a lot of it is because I have slowed down. I have gotten uh, more, more mature, a little more cerebral with my approach of how I train, but also how I compete. And I think instead of just using the infantryman approach and just like hit your head against the wall until you blast through it, being able to slow the match down and allow my opponents to have a vote has actually helped me, which is kind of may seem counterproductive to some people because they want to kind of shut their opponents down the whole time and dominate, but that's just not the case, especially against folks that majority of people in my bracket are Brazilians who've been doing this their entire life. I've been wrestling my whole life, but I've only been doing jujitsu my adult life, so I think that I look at it that way as well, of like my ability to flip those switches. I have a wrestling switch that's offense and defense, or offense or on and off, you will. Then I have a jiu-jitsu switch that's offense defense, and there's times where I have to flip those switches based on who my opponent is. And a lot of these guys that I beat in jiu-jitsu, a lot of times isn't because they're better, that I'm better at jiu-jitsu than them. They're probably better than I am on paper. But my ability to, I think, flip that switch and understanding that I need to broaden my scope of grappling in general, because to me, grappling's grappling. It's
Hmm.
not just jujitsu. I look at it like I have a superpower in my pocket, which is that wrestling, that catch wrestling that I'm bringing to jujitsu. So those are the things that I think people need to open their eyes to when it comes to jujitsu. And if they do find that they have that tunnel vision, being able to slow the match down, and it's also going to give you, you're just going to be better like intellectual thinking during that match. You're not going to hit that black where you're pinging 180, 190 heart rate, and you're making kind of irrational decisions in the moment. Your gross motor functions taking over. Your fine motor skills are diminished, which we can't do that in jujitsu, especially in the gi when you're trying to manipulate somebody's lapels or utilize your own lapel. You need those fine motor skills and that function and that good intellectual thought to be able to be present in the moment.
100%. I mean, that's, you know, we have that conversation almost weekly with one fundamentals guy or another, about, slowing down and breathing and I believe that they do get that tunnel vision. They want to, you can watch them like look at your lapel and they're, and so, and they want it no matter what. whether it's to their detriment. What do you think? What breathing method do you use to bring your heart rate down when whether you're mixed martial arts or now jujitsu? Because I know that a lot of guys will struggle with that, especially when if you got your 5 minute match, a minute or two, and then another five, and then another, when you're going
Yeah.
through your bracket.
So I think of it like even like most recently I did the Virginia Open and I told myself I'm going to do all four divisions. I'm going to win my bracket and then go to the Open, win that, and then I'm going to go the next day to Nogi and then win my bracket, win the next one. And I was like, I'm going to do four divisions, four golds is my goal. And God willing, it worked out for me and having all those matches. So I knew that most of my opponents probably weren't going to do that many matches. So I had to find ways in the moment to be able to use good diaphragmatic breathing. And my cornerman, so my business partner, he always usually corners me if he's not grappling at the same time. He's a real high level black belt as well, and he knows the verbal cue of tactical breathing. He'll call it out. People will hear it in the background, like or manager breathing or tactical breathing. The two cues that I give my competitors, and I also receive myself. And it's not that I think that they're not breathing, or it's not that he thinks that I'm not breathing in the moment. It's more just a cue to remind myself in those 50-50 exchanges. So if I'm stuck in like a 50-50 tie up on the feet, or if we are on the, I'm in the guard or he's in my guard, those are those moments where I can do the good tactical breathing. I take a little tactical pause. I take a good diaphragmatic breath, down low, fill up, and it's like, and again, people like think that I have, and people have mentioned a lot, like, man, you have unbelievable cardio. You just go for days, which I probably have good cardio, whatever, but I think a lot of it is because I do think about that breathing early. My fighters, when they're in the cage, if they're in a position with 20 seconds left in the round and I don't see a finish imminent, I will
Right.
start calling to them tactical breathing. They know in that moment they're holding, they're smothering, and they're already starting their rest round. They're already starting that 20, so they're getting, it's a superpower. They're getting a minute and 20 seconds of rest as opposed to just like a frantic 45 seconds once they finally get back to the stool and I calm them down.
Yeah.
So they come out the next round and they are fresh and their opponent is not fresh. So those little tricks of the trade with that. But I mean, I don't coach when I coach my guys in fights or competition, unless there's something glaring. Most of my coaching, you'll hear it in the corner is, hey brother, manage your breathing. Hey, manage your grips. It is the most like rudimentary, basic coaching because all the hard work's already been done. If there's something that's glaring that I see, obviously I'll call it out. But for the most part, there's not a whole lot of me saying like, oh, watch out for this, watch out for
Yeah.
negative coaching, which a lot of people are guilty of that. Oh, don't let him do that. Oh, don't, obviously he knows that don't let him do that. He's trying. Come on, coach, give
Yeah.
him something better than that. So I look at it like if I don't have anything to say, I'll just say some basic reminders of, hey, manage your breathing, manage your grips, and that's honestly about what my coaching level when it comes to competition.
Yeah. When you're actually in it, are there any like physical cues, something that you feel where you feel like you either need to manage your breathing or actually if do you ever catch yourself getting into that tunnel vision kind of scenario where you go, oh, okay, let me reset.
I do. And there's moments when I'm on top when I'm passing guard because generally people stand up with me. I'm going to take them down, and if they a lot of the Brazilians that I go against they pull guard, and I expect that of them to pull guard, so I'll end up on top anyways. The moment that I can get their I call it violator posture. I can get my knee crested through their guard, so I'm still stuck in their guard. That's the moment I know the tide's shifting in my favor. When they still have their grips and their guard's still closed and I'm still fighting to get that guard open, that's where I'm probably more frantic and I get more, my heart rate starts elevating. I can feel my breathing, getting more labored. But the moment that I get that knee crested to the guard into violator posture, then I can choose if I go across or through the guard, to mount or side control. That's honestly like, just like right away. It's like, I'm in my
Yeah.
element and I get my
Yeah.
underhook, far side underhook. I slide into home plate and the side control. And it's one of those that's like a position where I just know that I have the ability against anybody in the world. If I get to side control, my pressure from that position, there's not many people that can replicate that. and in their gym and their training. And that's where I know it's not like I got you, I'm for sure going to win this, but the odds of me feeling more comfortable here, my heart rate, lowers because
You're at home.
this is my spot. And thing
Yeah.
is, to be fair, my jiu-jitsu is not fancy. You're not going to see highlight reels and stuff like that, but it's very controlling. And there's a reason why I've had the success I've had in jiu-jitsu competition. Once I get on top of somebody and get in side control, it's one of those places where I can really relax and get my heart rate down. And now they're carrying all my weight. Gravity's on top of them. I'm on top of them. The clock is going down right now, and they're gonna have to make a mistake or at least create some crazy scramble to get out of that position. So, yeah, I would say that leading up to that position, there's a little tunnel vision, and I get a little. But
Yeah.
the moment I get past that, that's when like, and I see everything and I feel everything and I feel like it's almost slow motion at that point. I can see what they're trying to do, and then I can capitalize and hopefully get the submission.
I mean, I can relate a bit to that. It's side control is my home. That's where I'm comfortable. Mostly, I'm a big guy, but it's also where I just feel like, I can go to work and it's not a frantic thing where I'm in constant danger. But it's, and as far as fancy stuff, it's one of the reasons why I like watching Hodger Gracie.
Yes.
You know,
I talk about Hodger all the time. Yes.
yeah, like the guy is, I saw a recent podcast. I don't think he was offended, but he said, people keep saying that my jujitsu is basic, and he said it's not basic. I do the basic things at a more intricate level than everybody else.
At a perfection. Yes.
Yes. So, I love it. So are you gonna do like pans and worlds? Is that what you have queued up?
Yeah. So I'm the 2026 returning pan champion. So I won pans this year in the gi, and this will be my first time because of military and different stuff that I'll be able to go to worlds. So I'll go to worlds and defend my pan title there. So I should be seated pretty well. I don't get to compete as much as a lot of these guys do, but I should be top 3 or 4 seed in the world. I think I looked at my bracket the other day. There's already like 32 people signed up. I'm assuming that number will almost double by the end of the month.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those tournaments where I don't put too much pressure on myself when it comes to grappling. I just really enjoy it. Enjoy competition, period. But I do think that winning pans this year, and then how I've been doing it in the opens and other super fights that I've had, I do feel like I'm kind of the target's on my back. I'm the one that's been. I don't think I got a point scored on me at pans. I was able to really just get to my game early. So I think there's definitely some folks that are aiming for me, and yeah. So I'm excited. This is a whole new thing where and most people like, oh, he's just for a long time, oh, he's just a wrestler, really good wrestler, good shape. Oh, he's just a really good no-gi competitor. So doing gi and being able to have success in the gi means a lot. Like to me personally, not that I'm proving to other people, but like people look at me like, oh, he's a good wrestler. Oh, he's a good no-gi guy. Oh, he's just a good fighter. Oh, he's, it's always like this excuse of why I beat somebody in the room or at a tournament.
Sure.
But then when I go in the gi and after not having a gi on for most of my fighting career, most of the beginning of my jiu-jitsu journey, be able to get in the gi and have this success that I've had, I'm excited about that challenge. And then, so I think in a perfect world, so I won pans, I'll win worlds, and then I'll go to Europeans. Wasn't able to go this year, so I'll go next year to get that kind of the triple crown. So God willing, win that, and then I'll do that. Then I want to do no-gi. I want to do pans, worlds, Euros, and triple crown and no-gi. That would mean a lot to me to be able to show my students as well. Like if you set your mind to it, you can do it. So that would be cool to me. Triple crown in both, and then I can I don't know, maybe play pickleball or something and try to be a pickleball world champion after that. So
okay, well, I bet you could pull that off. So are you do you compete at the adult, or are you only in masters? Or I haven't forgive me, I should know this, but
Yeah, so I do both,
okay.
depending on what the tournament is or what the super fight is. But for IBJJF right now, I'm doing masters.
Yeah.
I will bounce around based on if there's no matches for me, then I'll move weight classes, I'll move divisions. Like I'll go to super heavyweight, and I'm not a super heavyweight. I'll do
Yeah.
whatever just to get matches. So yeah, this will be Master Worlds that's out in Vegas coming up. So yeah,
Okay.
that'll be
Yeah.
fun.
It drives me nuts when people have an excuse. So I've always been an ultra heavy. I'm 230 pounds now, but I have been heavier. And, you know, especially a few years ago, there's one specific guy I'm not going to mention, and he's a good dude. He's a really good guy. But for the longest time, every single time we'd roll and I'd get him in something, he would ask me two questions every time. He would say, "How much do you weigh?"
Uh,
And then, which once or twice is fine if you're just trying to get a bear, like to figure out kind of like weight class and that kind of thing. But then it was always, yeah, you're so strong, and how much do you weigh every time? And there was a point where I had to check him. I say, I do jujitsu too. Like I'm in here every night rolling like you are, doing the same things you're doing. And so it's not just because I'm big and heavy. By the way, you're strong too. Um, but
such a backhanded compliment like this. Oh man, you're so strong. Like, oh,
yeah,
thanks.
and I don't know how much he meant it as like a backhanded thing. I try to just assume people don't have malice, or that kind of an ego if they get tapped or whatever. But you can only ask me that so many times before I'm going to say, look, man, like I've been on the mats for a while now, so
That's true. Yeah.
yeah. Well, Colton, I appreciate your time, and it's incredible the things that you've been able to accomplish through your career, both in the military and in the UFC, and now what you're doing, at IBJJF and whatnot. Um, you know, you're not you're taking swings, and you're not missing a whole lot as far as things that the public can see, and I hope that your life and your family and everything are doing just as well as what we get to see publicly, because you're a pretty dynamic dude, and I'm very grateful that you came on today. Um, do you ever get out into the Columbus area ever for
I
any reason?
I don't, but I would. I'm going to go to
Okay.
Chicago this weekend. I'm taking leave. I'm going to go compete at Chicago Open.
Okay.
Just a little prep for Master Worlds and get a little more reps and sets in. There's some studs that are competing out there this weekend, so I'm excited to go out there and test myself against some folks I normally wouldn't get the opportunity to compete against.
Okay.
But I'm not opposed to heading to Ohio. I'm not far away, obviously.
Sure. Well, in March there's always the Arnold Classic. Grappling Industries always has a good event for that. It's a big tournament. It's one of the biggest tournaments at least east of the Mississippi. It might I've heard it billed as the biggest one every year. So that's in March if you end up having time. But thank you again. And if you want to follow Colton, I'll be putting all of his links in the show description and notes. So that includes Enlisted Nine. That includes any social media he wants included. And thank you for listening to the Still Rolling Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Please take the time and just subscribe to the podcast. It'll let you know when I have an episode come out, but it also helps kind of push the episodes out to other folks that might get something of value out of the things we talk about here. And we'll see you in a week. Thanks.